Hello and welcome to Framing Adventures with Mr. D. Today we're learning how to lay out a stair stringer. You'll need a tape measure, a pencil, a mighty framing square, a set of stair gauges, suspenders, and of course, always wear your safety glasses on the job site. Before we begin marking up our lumber, there are a few things we need to figure out about our staircase. We need to know the total rise, the total run, the unit rise, unit run, and number of steps in our staircase. So let's start filling in the blanks. To get the total rise of our staircase, we need to measure the vertical distance between the floors the staircase is connecting. For this example, I'm laying out a small stringer for an outdoor deck, so I measure from the deck surface to the patio below, and I get a total rise of 44 inches. Now we can determine how many steps the staircase is going to have. As a general rule, we try to make each step 7 inches high, so I can divide my total rise by 7 inches to determine the number of steps. But hold on a minute. When I divide my total rise by 7 inches, mathematics says I should have 6.29 steps. I don't want 6 normal steps and 1 partial. That simply won't do. So I'm going to round that 6.29 steps down to 6 even, and now I can divide my 44-inch total rise by 6 steps to find out how high each step is going to be. According to mathematics, each step will be 7.33 inches high, or about 7 5/16 on my tape measure. This number is my unit rise. Now that I know my unit rise, I can figure out my unit run. To do this, we're going to apply the golden rule. The golden rule says that the unit rise and unit run ought to add up to 18 inches. If you ignore the golden rule, you tend to wind up with stairs that are too steep or too far apart, and they turn out pretty awkward. So the golden rule tells me that for 7 5/16 inch risers, I should have 10 11/16 inch deep treads. This is my unit run. Now I can figure out my total run by multiplying the unit run by my number of steps. And at last, I have everything I need to start laying out my stringer. For this demonstration, I'm using a 2x10 stringer, but you might choose a different size depending on your project. I can get ready to lay out my pattern by setting up my framing square. I lay the square on the board so that it measures my unit run on the blade and my unit rise on the tongue. After it's lined up perfectly, then I can fasten my stair gauges to the square. You'll notice that the gauges don't line up exactly with my unit rise and run when I do this, but I don't need them to. The job is to act like stoppers in just the right spot. So don't fasten the gauges before lining up your square, or your measurements won't be exactly on the edge of the board. If you don't have stair gauges, you can also create a sliding stopper by clamping a piece of scrap material to the square instead. Now I can trace the square to lay out my 6 steps. Be careful at the end of one step to draw your line all the way to the edge of the board, or you could accidentally add a little bit on each step, making your stringer too long in the end. When you get to the ends, flip the square around to make the cut lines that will shape the top and bottom. Mark the areas to be removed with an X. Now your stringer's looking great, but there are still 2 important steps before it's ready to be cut out. First, eliminate the top step on your stringer. I know, it seems counterintuitive, and we just calculated that our staircase needs 6 steps, so why cut a stringer that only has 5? The answer is that when the stringer's put in place, the top of it's fastened to the joist header, which acts as the final riser. And secondly, we need to look at the bottom riser. Again, it seems odd, but we don't want to cut the bottom step the same height as all the others. The reason is that when we put our stair treads on top of the stringer, it'll make the bottom step too high, and all of the other steps the same height. So to counteract this, we subtract the thickness of 1 stair tread from the bottom of the stringer, so that when the tread is put on, it brings that step up to just the right height. Give all your measurements a good double check, and then you're ready to cut your stringer. If the stringer fits perfectly in place, go ahead and trace it onto your other 2x10s to get more identical stringers. Good luck, and get to work!